Hey, welcome in.
Welcome to the Arrowhead Addict podcast.
We are here coming to you live. The Kansas City Chiefs are going to the Super Bowl. You only win a Super Bowl 2 times every 5 years, right? Oh! The warm-up act is over. Let's bring in Melissa Etheridge, massive Chiefs fan. Melissa.
Super Bowl champion, 2-time Pro Bowler, and Trent Green. Trent Green, how you doing?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
And he picked it up! He picked it up! He's gonna score! And we'll see you next week. But until then, as always, go Chiefs.
Welcome into the Arrowhead Addict podcast on this Tuesday. Sterling Holmes, Josh Brisco, and y'all, we are here. It's football week. No more of we got nothing to talk about. No more of, we can get to that game once it comes around the corner, once we get a little closer to it. We're close to it. We're close to it, y'all. And if you can't tell, I am damn excited. Brisco, how are you?
You know, I feel like when you are the barometer for excitement, it's incredibly hard for me to be the most excited person on the show. But yes, frankly, I saw this old clip of Mike Francesa that was going around again today. I don't know if you've seen it or not yet, but it was throughout, I think, the 2020 season, where I'm not exaggerating. It's clips from week to week of him going, wow, can you believe it? It's week 1 already. Anyway, week 1, here the lines presented by, and then smash cut. Wow. Season's flying. It's week 2. And he just proceeds to do that almost every single week throughout the entire NFL season. And that is how I feel now, because we have had months of grueling offseason coverage where any crumb of bread was like manna from heaven. And now we're here 2 days away from the start of the NFL season, 2 days away from a game that matters, 2 days away from Chiefs Ravens, a rematch of the AFC Championship game. And I'm not sure I'm completely ready, Sterling. I feel like I needed a couple, Sunday would have been great. Like I am on Tuesday mode, but the Chiefs just finished their Friday practice. I gotta cram these next couple of days to get where I need to be on Thursday. I'm still, I would say, pretty damn ready for real football.
Dog, I am so excited. I had my fantasy football draft last night. First pick overall. Let's go.
Is McCaffrey or
McCaffrey? I did draft Hollywood Brown late in the draft because he's going to miss a couple weeks. Steal.
Too. Absolutely. Yeah.
Let's
Hollywood.
Go.
Worthy getting drafted over Hollywood and just like standard redraft leagues this year has been confusing to me, but I scooped it up somewhere.
But we don't care about that. What we care about is the Kansas City Chiefs and how they're going to
includes Xavier Worthy.
It includes it, but they're going to three-peat, and this is where it starts.
It's done.
It starts on Thursday. It starts Thursday. We're here. By the way, I am excited because this is almost like Christmas Eve. I love this. I wasn't always like this because the Chiefs weren't always good. And the reason why I'm so excited, even more so than maybe the past couple seasons, not just the history aspect, I think we're about to witness I think it's the most complete team in the Chiefs Mahomes era, the most complete front to back, 1 through 53. But the offense, I firmly believe, is about to be electric. I think the offense is back. Like, I think we're about to be screaming, yep, 31 points, 34. Go ahead and check your bingo card. You have 34? Yep, 34 rep. Like this is what I think is going to happen. And we weren't able to do that last year. I was angry. I got mad way too often for a team that won the Super Bowl. Mahomes has even talked about it. It wasn't super fun last year. Which, how hilarious. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, they're pounding sand. Joe Burrow's like, we got there, but we couldn't close the deal. I don't care if it's fun or not. I just want one. And Mahomes just has all these rings. He can't even turn doorknobs. Like, yeah, well, that one wasn't very fun. This one's going to be fun. And that's why I'm excited. For everyone listening right now, I had a really fun sit-down interview with Creed Humphrey. If you are an audio listener, you can check that out. It'll play right after this podcast. If you are a video listener, check it out on the Arrowhead Addict podcast YouTube channel after we get off this show. A lot of fun talking to Creed. I talk, does he get sick and tired of people making Creed Humphrey and Creed the band references, right? Got to get in there. Talk about the dead ball snap because he switches entire snap count stance. Like that, so many more intricacies here. I talked about some of the contract situation. Trey Smith, Kingsley Sumatia, a lot of fun talking with Creed. So check that out on the Arrowhead Addict YouTube podcast channel. Brisco, can you tell I'm excited? Like, can you tell I'm almost out of breath already? Like, I feel like a fat kid who's chasing a piece of cake.
Yeah, but you do kind of
have
that energy, like I would say roughly 300 days out of the year. So I understand the motivation this time. Many times I see you with that level of excitement, like Sterling. It is a Tuesday in mid-May. Why are you amped like this? But today, at the very least, it is absolutely justified. Did you ask Creed if he reconsidered only celebrating his contract for 24 hours or whatever? Like he said he had a day to appreciate like getting an absolute cartoonish Monopoly bag.
I did say, Trey Smith said that next dinner's on you. Have you taken Trey Smith out to dinner yet after the contract? And he goes, yeah, to the offensive line out. I said, do you have any money left over from that? He goes, Trey Smith put a big dent in that.
Good. Trey's not getting paid until next year. He needs to continue to just take bites out of Creed's contract. That feels only fair.
I do want to talk about the running backs before we get into the overarching picture.
Yeah.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire placed on the NFI. He will miss the first 4 games of the season. Now,
at least,
and that's kind of where I was going. 4 games. It seems like the absolute minimum. If he was out for the entire season, I would not be surprised. I think Keontae Ingram at this point would be RB4, I guess, if that's how you want to end up breaking that down. Amani Bailey, even to an extent. But they talked specifically with Clyde how they're taking care of him. They still have him on the getting paid. He's going to be around the building as much as he can, obviously. I think it was a good move by Kansas City, even if it doesn't necessarily cost them a ton, because $1.35 million of his $1.7 million contract was guaranteed from the get-go. So it's an extra, $350K. But for him, I think it's going to be built more or less on the relationships, him having a sense of normalcy, him having the health professionals he's been used to right here in Arrowhead. I just thought overall it was a nice move by Kansas City for a guy who, quite frankly, might not even play a single snap this season.
Yeah, so I've got the sort of like human practical and then the football cold, and I'll kind of go both directions on it and start with the human side of it all first. To your point, he specifically name-dropped Julie Freimeyer as one of the people who's been the most helpful for him throughout all of this when he talked about it all during training camp. And him being able to be on the NFI list and continue working with those people who have helped him out, as you mentioned, I think is a big deal and a very helpful thing. The other part of this is now I think there's a lot, and I obviously do not know the details of this specific relationship, but people heard him talk and went through that presser, and you think about Clyde and PTSD now, which certainly was sort of the origin point of all of that. But the specific symptoms that had hospitalized him, as he talked about, was this cyclic vomiting syndrome, which I know nothing about beyond what he said day of and when I Googled in the following hours, where it's just like uncontrollable vomiting. That's a very physical symptom of this deep psychological, and to be clear, psychological doesn't mean not physical, or certainly doesn't mean not real. But in case anyone has any terminology questions there. So there is a very, very practical element of that to say, hey, we can figure out your best care plan, like you said, with a sense of normalcy with the people around you. By all reports we've ever heard, off the record and on the record, that building also loves Clyde. And so that should be a relatively easy thing for everyone to kind of support each other. It might be good for the team to have Clyde still in the building. So you just hope that continues to get worked on and figured out as they go, which is, there's not a recovery timeline for something like that. You have a few weeks about your sternoclavicular joint, or a few weeks about your hamstring, or a few months about an ACL or a broken bone. And there's just not that kind of recovery timeline for PTSD spinning off into this vomiting thing and all that brings with it. So all of that seems smart, responsible, good, and we wish Clyde and the team and his team nothing but the best. On the roster construction side, I think part of the reason that they needed to carry 4 running backs was because they weren't sure where Clyde was going to be physically and mentally when the season got here. Now, and they called up the defensive tackle that they signed to the practice squad, former 6th-round pick of the Eagles, whose name escapes me at the moment, and I'm not confident in pronouncing it once I get there. I'll pull that up in a second. Matt Derrick tweeted out a nice little phonetic, but
yeah, I'll let you pronounce that one because
I will do it, but I literally don't have it in front of me, and I have not yet committed it to memory. But now he's on the 53-man roster, so good for him. They could game day elevate Amani Bailey or Ingram, and that would make sense. But I think right now, especially if you feel comfortable with like Sky Moore being one of your main kick returners, Carson Steele maybe does a smidge less of that. You're certainly putting a lot on the shoulders of Samaje Perine, an excellent and important signing. That was excellent and important before Clyde was put on NFI. The other element of it, and again, I hope this can be fully separated from everything else we've been talking about. Clyde, we talked about this before training camp. He was not the RB2 you want to have at full strength, whatever that is for him. We just haven't seen that pop or that juice from him since a couple of his biggest injuries throughout his NFL career to this point. So having somebody else you can rely on was just absolutely mandatory. At this point, if you say, hey, the Chiefs have a 3-man running back room of Isaiah Pacheco, Samaje Perine, and Carson Steele, I feel better about that than I did when it was Isaiah Pacheco, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and Deneric Prince, or whoever else you would have put in that third spot. So I think, again, the terms in the process of all of this, you wouldn't wish on anybody. But I think the end result right now is that the Chiefs have a better top 3 running backs than they did 2 months ago, 6 months ago, 1 month ago.
And Samaje Perine talked yesterday. Some of us had to work on Labor Day because we're grinders.
Oh boy. Some of us had to work on Saturday and Sunday and Monday because the Chiefs are grinders.
Yeah, it's very fair. But they talked to Samaje Perine, and he mentioned it's not ideal getting the playbook two days before, and now you got to learn it. But at the same time, sounds like he's going to be ready to go. I think it was an interesting point you brought up, Carson Steele. His the amount, or should I say lack of snaps he gets on special teams should correlate to where the Chiefs view him as either RB2 or RB3. Samaje Perine not going to play any special team snaps. That was a big part. Apparently, they actually had more a move and play for Samaje Perine even before Peyton Hendershot, even though on the actual waiver wire, how it came down, Peyton was before Samaje.
Perine was in the building for like 2 days before it was official.
Yeah, because Perine was not going to play special teams, and so they needed someone to play special teams, which means Irv Smith also wasn't, which then, of course, resulted in Irv Smith not making it, and they brought in Peyton Hendershot, a tight end who plays a lot of special teams. Just some behind the scenes of how the 53-man roster does get broken down, especially in regard to the new kickoff rules and how valuable the team and how much importance they put on special teams. So I thought that was fairly interesting. I do want to talk a lot, though, about the Ravens because they're losing, 13 players from last season. They've gained some. And I'm not saying they're not a good team, but I think it would also be foolhardy to say they don't have 3 brand new starters on the offensive line. I think it's fair to point out that they've lost one of the more underrated players last year. Jadeveon Clowney had, I think it was 77 pressures last year. Insane. Really 77 pressures last year. Insane.
At 77 years old, that is incredibly impressive.
He's finally hitting his potential that he was drafted for, right? He's finally reaching the ceiling.
Yeah.
They lost, obviously, Geno Stone, but they also brought in New Orleans Saints, Marcus Williams. They lost Patrick Queen, but they still have Owe, who's back. Ajabo, who was a second-round draft pick last year. Kyle Van Noy is back. Obviously, don't forget about Roquan Smith. And then Trenton Simpson in limited action last year was really solid. So I don't know how you view the Ravens, where they lost a lot of players. They gained an influx of talent as well. A lot of their coaching staff has had some turnover. Obviously, the offensive line coach, very sad and tragic, passed away.
Yeah.
But there is a lot of change with the Ravens. How do you view this?
I think first and foremost, probably the biggest key to the game is what Marlon Tuipulotu is going to bring to the Chiefs 53-man roster. That's the player whose name thank you. Shout out to Big Marlin. So as you mentioned, the biggest departure that I would begin with is the one that throws them into the most, I don't want to say disarray, because they're a very stable organization. They were stable with Joe Flacco and won a Super Bowl. They were stable after Joe Flacco in the transitory period to Lamar Jackson. They've been stable when Lamar Jackson has been ill or hurt over the course of John Harbaugh's career there. But they lost Mike Macdonald, and he took some coaches with him defensively too. That was a very talented defensive roster. It is still a very talented defensive roster. But the thing that we just don't know, that frankly, I don't know if the Ravens know, is what is going to be the state of that defense when you lose your defensive signal caller and then the people that he took with him to Seattle, where he's the head coach now of the Seattle Seahawks, Mike Macdonald. That to me is intriguing on a variety of levels, in part because, so like, again, start with Harbaugh, right? I'm going very coaching heavy. You mentioned a lot of players. If you want to kind of circle back to some specific players, we can do that too. But I think this is funny and interesting because it's very, very hard to gauge. Harbaugh is almost certainly like a top 5 NFL head coach. I feel like probably pretty consensus. And I think maybe one of the underrated head coaches of this sort of era of football, in part because he is neither a quote unquote offensive genius nor a defensive guru. He was a special teams coach that became.
Why isn't it offensive gurus or defensive?
A defensive genius? I don't know.
Yeah.
I was thinking that as I was saying it, but it felt so right to orient it the way that I did. I'm not sure. I think because the Ryans are defensive gurus. I'm thinking like Rob Ryan with the long hair and everything, and Kyle Shanahan is an offensive genius. I don't know. Honestly, Sterling, my hunch is that if we really, really explored that, we would find some unsavory origins for why that happens. It's like, oh, weird. Why can't Brian Flores be a genius? Why can't he be a defensive genius? What are you saying? So I'm not sure, but it's a very good question. But with where the Ravens stand now, so much of what they did was, and the reason that Macdonald was one of the most sought after coaches in this last hiring cycle, despite being a defensive hire, which is less sexy than an offensive hire in the modern NFL right now, is because they were able to do so much intriguing stuff schematically and maximize the players that they did have. We all believe that coaching matters to some extent, but it's very hard to figure out what the linear point A to point B is there of how much better is Steve Spagnuolo making this defense on a day-to-day basis. I think probably quite a bit. Well, if Steve Spagnuolo got a head coaching job this last offseason and Dave Merritt was the defensive coordinator, would you be panicking about the Chiefs defense? Probably not. What if Spags got a head coaching job and he took Dave Merritt to be his defensive coordinator? Well, if Joe Cullen was the DC, I'd still feel okay about how things were going. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
the goalposts always move, I think, to kind of support your priors on how much coaches matter and how much you like a certain team. They still have Lamar Jackson, a worthy MVP last year, for all of the way that discourse around Lamar Jackson gets all sorts of screwy. It's such an interesting matchup to be the one that leads off the season because both teams have so many questions that popped up over the course of this offseason, but they were the 2 best teams in the AFC last year by a pretty healthy margin. And that makes for an incredibly compelling matchup.
Yeah. Again, this is, I don't know if you consider this a good thing for KC, a bad thing for Kansas City. All of a sudden, now you are facing the Ravens week 1. Right? Like, I don't know how you view this. Obviously, no Hollywood he's out. Not ideal, but the Ravens have so much turnover. Are they going to be better at the end of the season now that they have gelled, or will they be injured at the end of the season as you have an aging running back? You have a quarterback who he's not finished all of his seasons, obviously. Mark Andrews, how do you view, like, I think there's ways of looking at it. End of the day, you got to take care of business. I think we're lucky here in the way that the Chiefs lost the home opener last year. And there was some panic. But the Chiefs lost the
Travis
home opener.
Kelce got hurt today a year ago, by the way.
And Chris Jones.
Not necessarily 365 days, but it was the Tuesday, Friday practice That's when his knee went.
Chris Jones was Hassan Reddick/, Jamar chasing, and there was a whole bunch of
Katzing.
Unrest, right? They didn't win the 1 seed in the AFC.
Yep.
And they still won the Super Bowl. So I have less concern that if the Chiefs lose this game, that all of a sudden that now we have to crown the Ravens. No, the Chiefs are still there.
I'll fight you on that a little bit.
I think the game means more for Baltimore than Kansas City by a fairly wide margin. But also I'm sitting back going, what does Baltimore really have to prove? Because we know they're good in the regular season.
Yep.
We know this.
Yep.
It doesn't matter. What matters is, can they finally do it in the playoffs? We know the Chiefs, even if they lose week 1, even if they don't get the 1 seed, even if they have to go on the road, they can win. So I have this weird back and forth with myself where I'm like, does this game really mean that much for Baltimore? Or are they also saying, you know what, same point. Yeah, they beat us. They knocked us out of the playoffs. But who cares about the regular season? We got to eventually do it come playoff time.
I think there are two truths in there. The first one is the one that no, this is gonna sound like I'm launching a conspiracy theory, but I'm gonna stick to it here. The first takeaway from that, Sterling, is the one that the national media doesn't want you to know, which is that you are correct to say this game doesn't matter more than one game for either of these teams. It may in tiebreaker sense, right? This may be a game and a half. This is not 17 games. This isn't 5 games. It's not even 2, unless the tiebreaker necessitates that this ends up being basically worth 2, right? Which it could be. I'm going to come back to that. But the first lane here is that either of these teams could be blown out or have the blowout on their side on Thursday, and they would both be pretty much just as likely to do what they want to do by making the playoffs, and then the questions come up again. If the Ravens win on Thursday night, 34-17, and then the divisional round game is the Chiefs going to Baltimore in the playoffs. If you say, well, I'm actually taking the Ravens to win 34-17 because that's what happened in the first game of the year in early September, you're a moron. Like, it's never that simple. And I do think both of these teams will ultimately have their seasons determined by postseason success, which is why this game matters to me from a standings perspective, a little more than I think it might for you. In part because I don't know if the Chiefs win the Super Bowl last year, if they needed the Week 18 game. If Travis Kelce goes out and plays against Easton Stick's Chargers with the rest of the starters, with Chris Jones still out there chasing $1 million, the version of Travis Kelce specifically that we saw from Week 17 to the wild card game was some like Captain America super serum kind of stuff. Like the youth came back after a long season where he was banged up off and on throughout the year. The other thing, and this doesn't invalidate it at all, but the Chiefs completely outclassed the Dolphins. The stadium mattered, the temperature mattered, the teams and the matchups mattered. Every game you play in the playoffs gives you at least a chance to lose it. And the extra refreshed look that we got of the Chiefs when the playoffs did arrive makes me think they could really, and I say this every year, so this isn't even different for this squad necessarily, they could really benefit by having that first round bye and then obviously home field advantage throughout the playoffs. Every team is seeking that. Every team is going to have that on their bulletin board if they're a real contender. But I do think it matters in that sense. It does not matter narratively. Week 1 will not determine what happens if the Chiefs and Ravens match up in the AFC Championship game again, except for perhaps which stadium they're playing in.
Yeah. I want to give a shout out to Rhino. He's been a Ring of Honor member for now 30 months. And one shout out to Rhino. That was a badass little sign he gets. Look at that. Ring of Honor, 30 months. That's pretty cool. You get a plaque. It's a plaque right there. I want to shout out to Justin Pugh right there. Justin Pugh, he was a offensive lineman last played with the Giants. He's in the chat right there. Says, I'm coming to the game. Where's the best tailgate at? Trying to meet the best Chiefs fans. Shout out Justin.
I was thinking, what did Justin Pugh, like, what is his connection to the, oh, he's in the chat? All right, cool.
Yeah, he's in the chat right here. He's trying to come to Kansas City. I think he's going to every single Thursday night football game to see who the best fans are. So shout out Justin. I interviewed Justin actually at the Super Bowl last year. His whole joke was he came off the couch and then became because the Giants called him up. Shout out Justin. So Chiefs fans, give him a good heads up, good advice here. I told him Casey Birico, Gates, Joe's. You can't go wrong. Arthur Bryant slaps.
He's specifically asking for tailgate locations right now, it looks like, right? So that the chat and the fellow Twitter users are going to have to answer that, who get to have their boots on the ground out there in the Arrowhead parking lot.
Yeah.
You can't just walk into any building in Kansas City and ask for a burnt end, and if they're a good establishment, they'll just throw one into your mouth from across the room.
It's like a hibachi grill.
Yes.
Right? It's like a hibachi chef. So
hold on.
Hibachi chef this.
Dear Mr. Mayor, why isn't that a feature offered at KCI? When you arrive in Kansas City, why is there not a burnt end launcher, like a tennis ball launcher for an overactive dog? Why isn't there a burnt end launcher that just straight in your mouth from, I don't know, 30 yards?
Yeah, Vegas, you want a bathroom? No chance, pal. You get slot machines.
Yes.
By the way, the Vegas bathroom is the grossest bathroom I've been in, or the grossest airport I've been in probably my entire life.
I got naked in a Las Vegas bathroom.
Does not surprise me. Was that pre or post diabetes? Or was that kind of in the middle of it when you were like...
was that in a midst of psychosis? I think it was after. I can't remember. It was one of those Tahoe trips. And by the time we left really early in the morning, and by the time we got to the airport in Vegas, I went to take a little potty break, and I saw that my underwear were on backwards. And so I just kind of Winnie the Poohed it there. And in retrospect, I should have gone into the stall to do it, but nobody's perfect.
I hate everything that just happened right there. I did not even know that. I hated that. Hated it. All right. Actual game plan talk here, though, because in regards to what happened in the playoffs, the whole knock was the Ravens abandoned running the football. And I gave some pushback to say, well, because they couldn't. They struggled. They were going nowhere on the ground. And quite frankly, they had some success throwing the football. So I think there's a little bit of a false narrative in that regard. But because they lost, that is what kind of transpired post was they quit running. Well, now they have Derrick Henry. Do you think we're going to see almost a mantra of Baltimore saying, you know what? We heard you. We're going to run the bleep out of the ball. Derrick Henry's getting 25 touches. Lamar is going to get his 12 carries, and we're going to focus on the ground game. Do you think there's some truth to that, or are we maybe looking too much into the national driven media instead of maybe the actual what happens on the field?
I think maybe different process, same result in this specific instance, because you're right. The Ravens, quote, stopped running the ball because the Chiefs made stopping the run a priority. I don't think they're going to do that to that level in this game here. I am reminded of a pesky little AFC championship game a few years back where a whole lot of people were talking about how Derrick Henry was going to be the one to just run through Patrick Mahomes. Like, they play on different sides of the... Nope, doesn't matter. Derrick Henry is going to be the way the Titans get to a Super Bowl, which, by the way, doesn't that feel like a long time ago? Crazy. I kind of hope for Derrick Henry's sake, it's not just 20 carries a game to him. I wonder if it will be. It is a dynamic running offense, and I am kind of worried about, hey, Leo Chanel, can you get to the edge the same time Lamar Jackson does, please? Because that's your job. There will be ways, and there will be times in which the Ravens running game makes you go like, oh, this is going to be a tight one. Like, this game is going to be a game as we all expected and in a lot of ways hope for. You know, entertaining is nice. Blowouts are relaxing. But I do think the Ravens will run the ball more, and in part because they will run the ball more successfully in this game than they did in the AFC Championship game, because we have seen Steve Spagnuolo, we have seen this defense function really, really differently by the time the weather changes, essentially.
Yeah.
I think this year now, sometimes it's playoffs, sometimes it is opponent playoff type football that starts happening after Thanksgiving, maybe, certainly around Christmas. Not that last Christmas was anything to remember for Chiefs fans, but I think that we will see them run the ball. I think they'll run the ball somewhat well, especially because Lamar is almost certainly the most unique runner in football, accounting for playing quarterback. I do love watching Josh Allen run like a gazelle that just broke loose out of something and maybe got tased. I don't know. I do expect them to run the football more, but Lamar is like a straight up gazelle. Josh Allen's more like maybe a
tased gazelle.
More like a ram that
An
has
elk.
been
It's an
an
elk.
elk that got hit with a tranquilizer, but it didn't fully inject the whole way, so it's kind of just like dragging that back right leg. That's Josh Allen. The Ravens will run the ball. They'll run the ball pretty well. I think right now the point for the Chiefs is, yeah, we will let you run the ball pretty well. Go ahead and try to do that for 3.5, 4 yards a carry, and we're just going to make sure that Zay Flowers doesn't have an 80-yarder over our head.
Well, and that's also the situation of the Chiefs don't really have a CB2 that they feel comfortable with right now. Obviously, there's been a lot of injuries, mostly minor, to the secondary. They've not played together. Brian Cook's back, obviously. That's great. Nick Bolton hadn't played in the preseason because of his re-injury to his shoulder. He'll be playing with a brace, but said he's full go. It's just a situation of how rusty will the Chiefs defense be. Justin Reed, even to an extent, right? Even though he's a veteran, he should know where to be. He's been here now. How rusty will these guys be not playing hardly at all in the preseason? I think to me that's the question, and it does come down to, if they wanted to stop Derrick Henry, they could focus all their efforts to do that.
Right.
But then you're going to be leaving some one-on-ones with Watson, Williams, or Najee Johnson on the outside, potentially with a Zay Flowers. Is that the way Spags wants to operate? I don't think so. By the way, I'll be interviewing Derrick Henry. That'll be coming out on Thursday. So check out Stacking the Box on Thursday.
Ooh.
I will be talking with Derrick Henry. Should be releasing, I believe, before the game starts.
You just ask him what their game plan is, I guess, and just let us know.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll really give me that one.
It's worth asking.
Think so?
Yeah, I think how many
Derek?
Hey Derek, how many touches are you going to get against the Chiefs? I want a specific number.
So
Derek, does Steve Spagnuolo scare you? Be honest. It's okay. It's just you and me here.
On Stacking the Box. You can check that out on I believe Thursday.
Derek, what if you just took those Wildcat snaps again and maybe you threw it to Lamar?
Ooh.
Is he going to have the same hairstyle in season again? It's like the most iconic power back look of all time.
It's almost like, yeah, just that's what did Sloth say. Wouldn't it be better if you interviewed him after the game so you could poke fun at him for losing? LOL. I don't think I'd make fun of him, though, even if he lost. I'd probably still be like, hey, Derek, that was a pretty good game.
I think Derrick Henry could have 14 fumbles in a game. And I don't think you would crack a joke about it to Derrick Henry. And that's not because you're a coward. It's because you're smart.
Yeah.
And it's not because Derrick Henry will hurt you. It's because it will be a bad interview, and he's a bad man.
Hey, Derek, so you shouldn't have had that popcorn, huh? I could do that, something like that, maybe.
I don't think that's going to...
No, I wouldn't actually do that.
I don't think that's a good idea.
Well, as far as matchups you're looking forward to in this game, are there a couple that stand out, a couple of positional battles you're looking at here?
You've alluded to one of the biggest questions already, and this is the vagueness of this is going to make it difficult to figure out if we're talking about Zay Flowers or Rashad Bateman or at times maybe Mark Andrews. But we don't know who CB2 is, and I'm not sure we really know where Trent McDuffie is going to line up most of the time. So that's a little bit of a sidestepping of like your typical like this guy versus this guy matchup, but it's the single biggest question I think I have about this Chiefs team as of right now that hasn't been largely answered throughout camp, throughout the preseason, throughout our own logical assumptions to this point. I just don't even know who they want the number 2 guy to be. I assume Watson and Williams probably in that order, but Watson looked kind of rusty and not great when he played deep into the third preseason game. He didn't play deep in the third preseason game because he's been terrible. He played deep into the third preseason game because he hasn't gotten live reps. So I'm not panicking about that. But even if Watson and Williams are your top 2 guys behind McDuffie, is McDuffie going to stay in the slot? Ben Solak, now of ESPN, wrote about that. He made Trent McDuffie the Chiefs' X factor for this season, despite, as he noted, like McDuffie almost certainly being the quote-unquote best player on his 32-player X factor rankings. He's not like a surprise. It's not will Trent McDuffie be good or not. It's how are the Chiefs going to decide how to use him this year, and then what's the domino effect going to be of everybody else around him. So the outside corners, I guess really just the cornerback trio is my biggest question, and therefore ends up being, I think, the most important matchup that we should probably be talking about more.
Yeah, and I wonder if Trent McDuffie travels with Zay Flowers.
True, he could.
If there was a receiver for him to travel on, you think Zay would be it.
That makes sense.
He is clearly their best wide receiver. Zay, I'm assuming, is going to move all over the field. There's not a size differential. In fact, this might be one where Trent's actually bigger than the receiver he's going up against.
Right.
It's not A.J. Brown. This, to me, would make sense if you were going to travel. This could be the game you do it.
Spags vaguely referenced that yesterday. Somebody asked about the corner thing, and I think he said, like, he mentioned the possibility of traveling, but it sounded like something that he was considering later down the road. It wasn't like a media little sidestep kind of, oh yeah, well, I guess we could travel starting in week 2, maybe. It was just the way that he was talking about it. I don't have the exact quote up, but it made me think they're not likely to do that. But to your point, this would be a pretty interesting time to test it because of the matchup there.
Yeah, I do find it funny. One of my favorite things Spags said was, you see all these big wide receivers. Don't know why they don't come to play defense. I was
But hey,
like,
Spags,
true.
I do know, though, it's because they catch the ball and they get a lot of money over there.
Yeah, you get more money if you do that. Yeah, there's not many. Like Jalen Ramsey's like the biggest cornerback I feel like you really see. He was like, what, 6'2", maybe 6'3".
I'd love to see just a huge corner. The Chiefs have dabbled. I guess this makes sense because Spags was the one asking that. The Chiefs have dabbled in that, right? Like, Sean Smith was a pretty big dude, right?
He's pretty big.
And Joshua
Williams is pretty big.
I think Josh Williams is 6'2" or 6'3".
Yeah, and then Jalen Watson's pretty tall, but he's fairly lanky. No, I thought that was a very funny little quip from Steve Spagnuolo. I think for me, one of the ones I'm looking at is Travis Kelce versus Kyle Hamilton, part 2, whatever part this number is going to be now, like as far as directly competing. Because
I'm sorry for the stupid tangent. I want you to actually unpack that. But we're like, yeah, Sean Smith, big guy, 6'2". Trent McDuffie, little guy, 5'11".
Yeah.
The ranges here are so small, but then do end up having an impact. Sorry, talk about talk about Travis Kelce and Kyle Hamilton.
Yeah, I don't just want to pick Travis because it's Travis Kelce, but I think Travis is going to have a resurgence season. I firmly believe that. So for all the people who are like, yeah, well, maybe he's starting his down slope or the age, or well, they went out and drafted, Jared Wiley, all that stuff. I think Travis is going over a K this year fairly easily. And the reason being is last year he was the entire offense pretty much until about week 8 or 9, until Rashee Rice really took off. It was Travis. And then, okay, MVS might drop it. So let me look for Travis again. Okay, Sky Moore is still being blanketed. He's not. Okay, so Travis, that was the whole offense. So he was double teamed. He was getting banged up time and time every single game. Well, now you have Xavier Worthy. And there's a specific play. I hate doing this because it's against the Detroit Lions and their backups. Xavier got triple teamed on a deep ball. Who was wide open in the very middle of the field? It was Travis Kelce.
That makes sense.
The Lions go. Oh, we look at Xavier. He's we don't want to give the touchdown. And Travis Kelce is 25 yards downfield, wide open. And I think he actually hit Justin Watson on the play because Justin Watson was also wide open. The point is, Rashee Rice, no longer just an average A-dot of 0 at the line of scrimmage. They opened him up as the season progressed. Even without Hollywood Brown, Xavier Worthy, they're going to open up so much more over the middle for Travis Kelce. And then you have your third down receiver, not a third down back, a third down receiver, a.k.a. Juju Smith-Schuster, to help find the soft spot in the defense, to help out with those linebackers. I'm just sitting here going, I think Travis has a massive resurgence this year, but my question is for game 1, when I do think Kyle Hamilton will be blanketed, he will be tasked to basically go one-on-one with T-Rav. Is this a game where we look back and say, okay, we wait till week 2. We wait until Geno Stone. We wait until, I guess the Bengals. Is Von Bell back or is it Jesse Bates? Von Bell, right? Because Jesse Bates is still in Atlanta.
Oh, yeah. Yes, correct.
So
Sorry, I was still stunned from T-Rav, and I was reeling, and I couldn't follow anything you said after you said T-Rav.
Wait, why?
It's
It's like toasted ravioli. Like, I love me some T-Ravs, but the only good thing St. Louis has.
You're an interesting guy, Sterling. The one-on-one matchup, and this was also true in the AFC Championship game, but I've already mentioned that I think there will be some strategic differences in how both teams, handle week 1 of 2024 as opposed to the last or second to last game of the 23 season. One-on-one with Travis Kelce has been a losing proposition since Chargers fans said Derwin James could do it, since Bills fans said Matt Milano could do it. That is not a good strategy, and it's not a good place to put one of your players. Kyle Hamilton is fascinating. He is an excellent player who I believe gave up his first touchdown to a tight end all year in the AFC Championship game against Travis Kelce in the playoffs last season, right? Wasn't that his first touchdown allowed to a tight end all year, I believe?
Yeah, it was just asinine. By the way, the catch and throw was perfection. It was great defense. I mean, he was blanketed.
He was exactly where he needed to be. No, Travis Kelce, T-Rav, didn't clown him or anything. It was just that you have your Godzilla versus Kong, your Pacific Rim battle, whatever, and sometimes the other guy lands a punch. Hamilton had a by all intents and purposes, had a good day outside of that by and large. So I still think the Ravens have to give him a little bit of help, have to provide a little extra attention to Travis Kelce. And if I was in their shoes right now, I think I'd be leaning towards making Xavier Worthy prove it. I think the fun thing is that as opposed to Kadarius Toney in week 1 last year, or MVS last year, or these other, or hey, Sky Moore will make you prove it, or even really, because he wasn't that big of a factor super early on, Rashee Rice last year, where as you mentioned, I mean, as the season went on, Mahomes learned to trust Rice, which gave him 2 trusted pass catchers in total, because it had just been Kelce until the mid-late season point with Rice. I would want to make sure that Xavier Worthy had the juice to beat my defense, and I would make sure that Travis Kelce was not going to take this away 10, 12 yards at a time. The difference is I do actually think Xavier Worthy has the juice to make it happen, and I think the Chiefs have prepared for him to be ready to do that, specifically since Hollywood got hurt. Hollywood and Travis Kelce is already a big test to figure out how you're going to cover both of those weapons. Both guys who I think can be number 1 weapons, but at this specific point in this offense, neither one of them are Justin Jefferson in that way, right? In terms of like the offense is running through him. Kelce is so unique that it's hard to compare him to anybody else. But even without Hollywood, having Rice and Kelce as sort of known quantities and known very, very good quantities, I think kind of puts Worthy in that inflection zone. And if you're the Chiefs, I think you probably feel pretty good about that. And I think that's probably the best answer the Ravens can ask for at this point.
I think one of the other matchups I want to look at before we get out of here, obviously, we'll have another show tomorrow and Thursday. Let's bleep and go. We will be back with pregame, halftime, and postgame. But I want to go back to the Ravens offensive line because yes, they have Ronnie Staley back, right? They have their all-pro left tackle, Ronnie Stanley. He's back, but how will he perform after the plethora of injuries he has sustained? They have Tyler Lindenbaum, who is a very good center. Very good center. But then your left guard, your right guard, and your potential, rotation at right tackle that they're talking about, they're young, they're inexperienced. How do the Chiefs and Spagnuolo try to attack this young, inexperienced offensive line of the Ravens? Will we see a lot of Chris Jones playing on the outside, maybe over the right tackle? Will we see maybe a little more FAU or even Leo Chenal line up on the right side, try and get a little bit of speed out there on the outside against a young cat? How do you think the Chiefs will try and attack this inexperienced, brand new offensive line?
I think that, and this has also maybe been a smidge under discussed over the last several months that we've had to discuss hypotheticals. There's just not a lot of depth in this defensive line right now. And so until Charles Omenihu gets back, I don't know if they're going to have as much flexibility as they'd like to. Certainly enough to move Chris Jones around or kick Mike Dana inside or however they want to manage that. But I think you have George Karlaftis, who's going to apply, I'm just going to say, consistent force throughout 60 minutes of football, and he'll have a couple of breakout plays throughout that. I think if you have your doubts about if these guys are ready for NFL speed, I think the place where it gets spagsy would be in the passing games. We've kind of talked about maybe not overemphasizing the run too much, even though Derrick Henry is scary and Lamar Jackson on the ground is scary. Lamar Jackson throwing the ball is also scary. So I think if you're going to try to put some extra stress on that young offensive line, you test their communication early and often, and it's simulated pressures. I can't remember why I was watching this rep for some reason. I think Seth wrote about it in some piece the last week or so. But you get this like I think you ended up with 6 guys on the line, and at the moment of the snap, you get. I was like, don't quote me on the specifics here, but essentially it was, all right, here comes Justin Reed, and here comes Trent McDuffie free, and Derek Nottie has dropped back about 4 yards, and he is sitting in the middle of a zone. And it works because Derek Nottie was right in the way of a passing lane. He was taking up some space, looking big, and I can't remember who it was against, but they had 2 guys blocking 3 rushers, and over here they had 2 guys blocking air, or at least 1 blocking air at that point. Being able to be ready for the looks that surprise you and when things change at the line of scrimmage, I think is one of the most underrated parts of the game, not just this game, but football in general, because we hear a lot about adjusting at the line and calling protections and running backs and pass pro and all of that. But I think very frequently, myself included, it's so hard to, even from the TV broadcast especially, it's so hard to identify and then track what's happening while you're also like seeing if the receivers are getting open or where the quarterback is moving. There's 22 guys on a field every play. It's an incredibly detailed sport.
Or what my ice cold beer is doing in my left hand as it takes its way to my lips. It's hard.
I haven't watched a football game with a beer in so long. I was like, oh yeah, or what my Google Doc says with my notes.
I have. Well, see, this is where you and I differ. I have my MacBook up and I'm doing my research and my notes during the game as I'm watching, as I have the X pulled up on my phone. And I'll also have on the left side an ICB. That's a nice cold beer for you all at home. You get a nice beer, or bourbon, whatever you want. Sometimes I'll get a little froggy and get a martini, but you got to have that cold one. It lets your brain juices flow as you can watch better football. It's just how it works.
ICB anywhere else right now. I could be anywhere else.
Don't see one in your hand right now, pal.
No, I'm just saying I was making ICB. I could be anywhere else. Yeah, I did crack open a little ICB doing some yard work yesterday. Labor Day, cleaning out the shed. I mean, it's just, it's what this life's about. All
I know, we are 2 sleeps away. If you're really brave, you don't have to sleep at all. You could just stay up through it. If you're really
I think I might be 4 sleeps away. I feel like a nap or 2 coming before kickoff.
2 8 plus 8 6 plus
2 long sleeps and maybe a couple of power naps away.
All right. I won't talk to you before the game, probably. Do you want to give me your prediction now, or are you gonna hold that close to the Brisco chest?
I've got nothing written down right now. Why don't I just give you some numbers?
Give me some numbers.
I'm going to tell you 2 numbers. I'm going to stick with this throughout several shows and several platforms. I'm a little worried about the secondary. Not big picture, but just immediate. How's it going to sort out? I think the Ravens defense is going to have a couple of moments of being maybe a little bit out of sorts. I really wish the Chiefs had Hollywood for this game. I really do. Maybe even more so next week. And I might be more worried about the secondary next week. We'll see. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna tick this on the lower end, although this might still hit the over. Going 27-24 Chiefs.
Ooh, that is the over, and I love that.
I don't know that I love the over anymore. What's the over under at?
I think 46.5. So, fun fact for you. I am typically a bet the under early in the season type of guy. I'm almost always early in the year, the defense has the advantage, bet the under.
Yeah.
Thursday night football, bet the under. I'm ripping the over.
Okay.
I'm
Can I change my
ripping
prediction to 7-4?
You know why? I think there is some concern with the Chiefs secondary. I do.
Yeah, I do too.
I don't think full season. I'm with you, big picture, but I think early on, I'm trying to be I'm not a homer.
I think there's
I'm
going to
a
be a play
realist.
on Thursday where you're like, oh, Jalen Watson needed an extra preseason game.
You're like, oh, that looked like college football where you see like a 60-yard touchdown. You're like, oh man, brutal. Like, I think there's going to be one of those, but I think the Chiefs offensively are going to come out hot. I'm just saying.
I'm kind of there too.
So I'm ripping the over, and when it's a 10-7 game and I'm looking like a buffoon, I don't need this to make me look like a buffoon. I can do that myself, thank you. But I'm going against my normal early season unders, and I'm ripping the over in this game.
I'm not ripping the over. I am tentatively walking up to it and then just tiptoeing over. What I could see happening as well is that both of these teams come out pretty hot. You get your scripted plays and everything. And then you see a little bit of the Chiefs offense maybe getting just a little bit stuffy somewhere around the end of the second quarter. But I think that I'm a little bit used to that from last season now because so many of the skill position players ended up being let down. I feel like the 27-point standard is back. That's my take for this season. Is that was it 2 years ago that last year the Chiefs didn't allow 27 points as a defense, right?
Yeah,
the year
like
before that or 2 years
like,
before that, they didn't score less than
less than 20. 27 is a number though.
I'm saying that the 27-point expectation for both sides of the ball should be there this year. That the Chiefs are going to be scoring 27. Once again, we're going to remember what that felt like. And I don't think the defense is going to be allowing a 30-burger on Thursday night. So I think the Chiefs win.
So for everyone who is on the audio version, up next will be the interview I had with Creed Humphrey. Had a lot of fun with Creed. Hopefully you guys all enjoyed as well.
And on the video version, Sterling is going to take his shirt off.
No.
Talk to you on Tuesday.
Tarps off. No, don't pause. Don't freeze. I like the college player that had a sack and then froze. That was a great sack move. You can watch it on the Arrowhead Addict YouTube channel.
Was a great sack.
I am so mad at you right now. If you want to give us a good review, I'd appreciate it. I'd probably not after looking at Brisco's silly pose right now, but we appreciate everyone. We're 2 days away from Chiefs football. I'm excited. I'll be back tomorrow with Adam Best. Until then, we are out.